Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of The Caregiver's World. It's been a few weeks since we have last brought you some live new content, but I am in the absolute lucky situation of having a woman from Germany, a lovely lady who has had her own share of experiences as a caregiver. And I wanted to bring you some of her insights, a little bit of her experiences, and we're just going to have a chat. Hopefully, you can get some insight and information out of this, trying to bring in somebody else's perspective in here. So I want to welcome you to Monica. Monica, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit about your experiences as a caregiver. Who have you looked after? Just a general scope so that we have a footing to start from.
Well, the caregiving actually starts when you have children, because there is the growing up when they're little, the crying, the nights that you don't sleep well, the times that they get ill, you don't sleep well. I had a daughter who was born with a heart problem, and that, of course, took a lot of time away from my son, who was also little at the time, but he was a very understanding, I must say so. Anyway, with children, they grow up, and luckily my daughter was operated on, and she is fine. The next step then, of course, is that your parents get on in age, and so that's the next caregiving.
Let me put a pause on it for a moment because I think you hit an excellent point that you're speaking of. You are a caregiver the minute you are a parent. And I think that there is a lot of attention that is missed from people regarding looking after your children. I mean, you already have to look after your children on a normal situation, but you say your daughter was born with a heart condition, so
Yes.
that was a different level of a care, perhaps additional attention to her.
Right.
And you said that your son was very understanding. Can you give me a little bit of a more detailed view of how the caregiving maybe was challenging for you, taking care of the two children? How old are they apart?
They are 3 years apart, and it's always a challenge. The first child is a challenge because you don't know, you don't have any experience. So you are on a daily basis and you go with the flow, so to speak. But in most cases, it's all fine, and the little illnesses, the colds and the whatever, that's fine, and that's good to handle, especially once they get older and they can tell you what's wrong with them. I have a headache and my tummy hurts and
Right.
all those things. When they're very little, you don't know. They're crying. Are they crying because they don't feel well, or are they crying just because they're bored? You don't know.
That's true.
So
They're
that's
just trying to get your attention, maybe.
right. So that's a feeling that is a little hard in the beginning for new parents, but you grow into it. So with Vanessa, of course, I knew, but it when I first had the news about her heart condition, I wasn't really that shocked. It just sunk in by and by day. And because she acted completely normal, she was not anyone who would turn blue because she couldn't get enough air or whatever. But the seriousness then came when they had to make sure what was wrong with her or with her heart. And then it gradually sinks in, wow, this is something serious. But as I said, luckily, with the help the family and my husband, you manage it. You do.
So the challenge alone of just looking after your children, which of course every parent can understand and relate to, and then having a sick child. But you mentioned that after surgery she was
Fine.
okay.
Yes, she was fine, and then of course you've got into the rut of being extra careful and pamper that child, and then you're being told by doctors, well, treat her very normally.
Right.
You have to get out of that again and say, okay, she can race down the street with the bicycles, with the rollerblades, with whatever, and so you get used to that, and you gradually outgrow it, while your children outgrow all their childhood problems too. Then, of course, that comes school and so on. But that's a different subject. That's not a caregiving subject per se. But I know I'm glad they're all fine, and they're all having families of their own now. And so after that, you get on and you start then with your parents, and they become your children.
That's a good point that you're making. So, what was your experience with caregiving for your parents? Did you have like your immediate mom and dad, or was it someone else? I believe you mentioned you had a brother who was also sick.
I had a brother who was sick. Well, first came my parents, who unfortunately both became more or less helpless. My mother depended on my father a lot, and then my father became ill, and he couldn't handle that anymore. And so I was faced with the fact that I had both parents to take care of. And we lived not in the same town, and I did not have the housing possibility that I would take them in.
Okay.
And they lived near my parents, and they tried for a while to manage, but my brother and I, we could both see that that was not working out. So they moved into a facility where...
like an assisted living?
Assisted living, where they, had their meals, and they didn't really have to worry about much. Mm-hmm. But I still visit, my brother could visit them anytime because he really lived around the corner. And he came always unexpectedly to see, are they really taking care of my parents or of our parents?
That's the best way to do it.
And I check on it, because a lot of times you have facilities that are neglecting people. Sure. And that was, of course, something we were worried about. But it all worked out fine. And my father was always he's an extrovert. He was an outgoing person, and he had friends there immediately. And he enjoyed it. He didn't have to cook, and they let sometimes people participate in the cooking, and he liked that because he cooked in the last years for my mother a lot. So in all, I was not happy, but relieved that it worked out. Mm-hmm. Because giving your parents, or taking the independence away from your parents, is very difficult. It's really, took me some time to get over the guilt. The guilt is one of the first things. Well, I should have taken them. And then I said, well, how would that have worked out? I was working full time.
Right.
My children were partially at university and so on. So I had a busy life of my own. And my parents, I know, would have slowly but surely, they start to depend on you more and more and more. And I just could not have handled all of that. So, and my brother, seeing that he lived close by, at least it gave me some comfort that he could look after them, and he could be there in an afternoon, or he came sometimes in the morning, and I came every 2 weeks. I drove about it's about 200 kilometers every weekend.
So how long would it take you?
Now, depended on the traffic,
Right.
anything up to 5 hours for one stretch.
Wow.
That
Okay.
we have had. When vacation time came on the
Forget it.
highway, it was murder. But in any way, we were happy to do it. So was my husband, who I must say really had my back.
Yeah, he understood the role.
He understood, and they were quite happy when we came. We then took them out. We had coffee in the afternoon, or we had lunch together. And I know my father is always. I'm always looking forward to. It was either Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember. But that kind of cut my weekend down too. The next day I had to go back to work. But in any case, they were fine. They were fine there.
Let me ask you something. You said that your father was an extrovert. How was your mother in comparison?
My mother was always a little bit of an introvert. If there was a group, she would be the one sitting there listening.
Okay.
Once in a while, she would say something, and the more or the older became, I don't know if it was age or just the way she became more and more quiet. It was very difficult. But she could defend herself when the conversation or at any point it came to something that she couldn't tolerate or she didn't like. She could bite you. I mean, she could come back very strong.
So she was engaged, but she maybe, like an introvert, decided that she didn't need to be involved in every conversation, more as an active listener, perhaps.
That's correct. I could tell she was listening and she knew what was going on,
Right.
because if it went or came to a point that she didn't like or couldn't tolerate, she came back at you.
Nice.
So that was always very very interesting with her. And my father died before my mother did, but she was then in the place she was established, and she had. I remember that she was still smoking at the time.
Oh.
Yes, she was always a smoker. Not a heavy smoker, but she liked to have a butt here and there. And there was a gentleman who was quite a bit younger than my mother. And they would go arm in arm, and then they would be out in the backyard, and there was a little park nearby. They would be out and they would be puffing away. This was after smoking then was not allowed anymore.
Oh, so you would have to smoke
they had to
outside.
go out, and they did. And there was also a cafe nearby, and my mother had a tea. Fellow had like a little beer or something, and there would be another group of people. So she was busy after my father passed
Right.
away, and she was established there.
What I wanted to ask you regarding that, first of all, it sounds like they were more in a home than assisted living. I understand from what I'm gathering from you, they were there full time and that had full time care.
Yes.
So that's more of an elderly home.
Right, right.
But I was wondering, you for people who don't know, such as myself, the setup in these places most of the time are presented in such depressive way. Now, I know you were in Europe and things might be a little different there, but I was wondering, you mentioned your father being social and activities. So from your experience or from what you saw from interacting with your parents, do you feel that the activities that they did at the home were very important to getting them motivated, because once depression hits, I think it only makes somebody's life not only harder, but their ailment can become a little bit more heightened.
Yes. No, I think it was definitely an improvement for them. The You're right. It was not just assisted living. Assisted living in Germany, it's a little bit a different setup. But in any case, no, they had their own room, bathroom, little apartment type, like a studio apartment. And they could choose to have the breakfast in their room, or they could go out, which most of the time they went to get their food in the dining area, where there was a little interaction. And I think that was good for both of them. For my father, because he was with other people, and for my mother, she was forced to do something and not being catered to by my father, because my father, in before they had gone to the assisted living, or the
home.
care facility, was catering to my mother. And it went to the point that I sometimes got very upset at both of them, because I said, your dependency is unhealthy. My mother depended on my father, and my father was devoted to caring for my mother. And that, I never thought that was very good, because it was draining my father a little bit, and it was making my mother
Less capable.
So
it's I don't think that being devoted itself is necessarily bad, but it doesn't. I think the problem here is that it didn't feel like it was a two-way devotion. It was like one-sided, and of course that can tire anyone out. I mean, things need to be balanced, right? You help each other.
That's true. That's what I kept saying. But older people are very stubborn.
So I've heard.
And trying to change their habits, it's also hard. But that's something there that they had to do.
I think it's more than too hard for them to try to change it. I think it's more like they don't see what you're seeing. They don't see your point of view. They don't understand what you mean by it. And so, I personally believe that people can change. I can tell you that for myself. I can change things, but sometimes I don't see it. And I will tell my loved ones, tell me and make me see things, and don't stop until I see it. Because from my from my point of view, I don't get where you're trying to get to. But when you're older, most of the time people don't have the patience to talk to them or try to see them. And so you just throw your hands up in the air and say, well, it's too late now. All right, so continue on with your journey with caregiving. So you said that was your parents. What happened next?
That was my parents, and then much later, my brother became ill. First he had a severe heart attack, from which he recovered.
How old was he?
He was. I was 65. He was 72.
Wow.
He had a severe heart attack, but he recovered nicely from it, and lived another 10 years when they discovered that he had cancer. And I felt so bad, because he was a fellow who didn't deserve that.
Yeah. But, a good soul.
Yeah, but that was... And the cancer, he tried everything. He did of course, after he also smoked, but after the heart attack, he gave up smoking.
Right.
He lived healthy. He did exercise and everything, and I think the cancer hit him out of the blue, and that was very, very hard on him. And I went to see him often, and we were talked at least twice a week. And
Was he married?
well, his wife had died 2 years before
Oh, wow.
that. So,
Okay.
as I said, that he was also a caregiver to his wife, who, well, that's she had a lung condition, and there was this smoking was also her downfall.
Wow.
And even after my brother's heart attack, he gave it up. She still smoked, not in the house, but by the open window or outside.
Okay.
And then after a couple of years, and she had been to the hospital the second time because of she couldn't breathe and she had water in the lungs and whatever. And she was upstairs smoking again, and he took the cigarettes away, and he said, "That was your last one."
Oh, wow.
So, sometimes, life is hard. Life is hard sometimes. It's no matter what you do, it just
Things happen.
things happen. Yes. And anyway, so he died a year after the diagnosis with cancer.
Wow.
And I also feel bad because we lived in Germany, and at the time we also lived for 4 or 5 months in Florida, and we left February, and I said, well, should I come down? And he said, no. And I said, okay, I'll see you when I get back. And
Right.
we didn't make it. We didn't see each other again.
So okay, so that's unfortunate with your brother. But at least he seems like he got to live a full life.
He got to live a full life. Yes. And he was very strong. He fought till the last moment, and he came home, and he had everything arranged in the house so that he could live there. He had a lady that would come in and take care of him, made him meals, and he had, as long as he could still move about, that he would warm it up in the microwave and eat whenever he wanted to, and not when she had it prepared. But I think towards the end he realized the cancer had moved to his. He had bladder cancer. It moved to his spine, and his legs didn't work anymore, and they couldn't walk. And so I think that he realized that was it. That was it, and he didn't want to anymore then. But he was at home, and I think that's what he wanted to. And his daughter, he has two, but the one daughter was with him. And yeah.
The next bit, it was really hands-on care. Like, aside from being a mom, it's almost like you went into another mother role, but with an adult, correct?
Right.
Which is even harder.
Yeah. Then the next caregiving occurred when my aunt, who at the time had just turned 100 and was living by herself in her apartment in a big house. She had financially, she was very independent, and she had a lady that came in and not only cleaned but took her to the doctor and got the groceries and whatever, and she lived close by, so she could call her and she would be there in 2 minutes.
Wow.
And I got a call from her one Sunday, and she said, I'm here over your aunt's house, and she can't breathe.
Oh, wow.
Or has difficulty breathing. Should I call? And I said, by all means, call an ambulance. And she has to see a doctor Sunday or not. I mean, she's 100. That's
Right.
serious. And they took her to the hospital, and she called me back, and she said she's comfortable, and it's a Sunday, and she's resting, and they're taking more steps tomorrow, on Monday. And she would like if I could. I said, of course, I'm coming down. So we went down, and we saw her in the hospital. And I talked to the doctor that she had water in her lungs quite a bit. And that was what, made it difficult for her to breathe. And we talked to the doctor, and he said, well, she's 100 years old, and her heart is also 100 years old.
That
So
sucks.
we cannot expect any miracles anymore. We do what we can. And then she stayed in the hospital for approximately 2 weeks, and she wanted to go home. Even so, they said, well, she should.
She wanted to go home.
She wanted to go home. And she also signed that because they asked her, do you have someone at home? And she says, yes.
To look after you.
So meaning that basically
That's you.
I had to look after her.
Right.
And it was November. And then, of course, I also called various agencies that have nurses that come to the house,
Right.
to at least help me along.
Sure.
And that was very, very difficult. We finally got someone from it's a Catholic thing, the Caritas, and they said they can send someone 3 times a day. But that was really, I almost had to get down on my knees because they just have so many people but so little staff.
So they were short-staffed. They
They
didn't.
were really short-staffed. And when she came home, she was in good spirits. She sat down at her desk and she was going through her mail and looking after everything. And so the first 2-3 days were fine. Then she started to have, I don't know whether it was nightmares or whatever, but she would not sleep through the night. 2 o'clock she called, 3 o'clock she called. So I was up most of the night, and I sat beside the bed. And we were, talk to me and so on. And I said,
Oh my God, it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
It's 3
I wanna
o'clock in the
sleep.
morning. Why don't you sleep? Of course, then she got into the pattern of sleeping during the day.
Oh no.
And she was up at night. And Bob, my husband, was with me, and he was then in the living room because I had kind of dozed off a little bit just to prepare myself for the night.
Sure.
And he would say, why don't you go to sleep, Kate? And I would be quiet for a while. I can't sleep. I can't sleep.
Kate was your aunt.
And anyway, it got worse over the following weeks, and she had to take, I don't know, she took a handful of pills for whatever, and I said, I think that's worthless. At her age, she was taking pills. The staff that came, the nurses, some of them were just shaking their heads saying,
How long was this going on for?
I was there for about 4 or 5 weeks before she died. And
So she didn't make it to 101.
she did not make it to 101, no. No.
So I'm interested in hot water if you need, of course. I am interested in particular with what you said about sleep. I'm sure you recalled one of the people that I have interviewed is a woman in her, I think she's in her 50s, who is looking after her mother. Her mother has dementia. And this poor woman has a similar situation where her mother does not sleep at night. And basically, the daughter is sleeping with her on the bed because she cannot be left alone for sleeping. And so, mom does not sleep. That means daughter does not sleep.
Right.
So, like you mentioned, they're up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, except the daughter has things to do, doctor's appointments to take her to get her ready for. So it's not like you can actually switch your lifestyle. There's a terminology for this, but there are people who actually have that. Their circadian rhythms are completely flipped, and they
Yes.
operate at nighttime and sleep during the daytime. You cannot do this when you have appointments and things that need to be addressed. So
Right.
you only did this for a month and a half, 2 months. This woman has been doing it for years. Do you have any advice on how to address that? Because I have actually spoken to doctors and I have asked this question to them, and their only answer is that happens with dementia. That really doesn't bring someone advice or help. How did you manage? I mean, I know you said you had your husband, but how would you address it if you had a second chance, for example? What would you do different?
Well, there is for me the the question of what would I do different or what would I do didn't really occur because of the age of my aunt and of the fact that I could see she was deteriorating. And therefore, I said, for whatever time it is, be it, I don't know,
Deal with it.
6 weeks, 8 weeks, I shall deal with it, even if it's 3 months. If it was someone who was in itself in good shape still, like a dementia where you would say, well, they can live still a number of years.
Right. You have some time still with you, so
That of course is a very different story, and it is even worse if you're a close relative, like it is your mother, your father, a brother. You do not have the distance that some caregiver has. So therefore, that makes it very hard to say, oh, what shall I do? But definitely, you do need help. That you can say, well, ideally it would be if another person gradually came in and said, well, I take this week, I'm taking the night shift, you take the day, and then we switch or whatever. But that, of course, it's almost impossible unless you have another relative who is willing to do that.
right.
But for another a caregiver, nurse, that is also a financial question that I would say most people cannot afford. And
That's very true.
that makes the decision different. I mean, as I said, you become a caregiver when you become a mother. But your children will grow up and they will grow out of all that. Whereby with your parents, they're just starting to grow into it.
Right.
And that, of course, then is a question: can I do it? Will I do it?
Can I do it on my own, and do I need help?
Right. What are my options? If it's a time that you can oversee, that you'd say, well, it'll be 2 months, 3 months, that's a different story, because you can see the end, that you
Right.
take a breather and say, now I'm having time for myself and I can do something else. And what I had with my aunt was, of course, the lady that had taken care of her would still be available to me. So she would say, I have time tomorrow at 10. I can come over for 2-3 hours. Or I come at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for a couple hours. And she would sit with my aunt, and I would then, with my husband, we would either go for a long walk or go sit in the little living room and just relax.
Detach for a moment.
And take a deep breath for the next round, so to speak.
Right.
But all in all, I think the experience is also something that you think of your own age, where
Right. What happens if I need this?
if I need
and how
this,
would I want to
yes,
be treated?
Yes. I mean, some people see it very detached and say, "Oh, I don't want to have family take care of me," and other people will need it. They'll
Right.
say, "No, I don't want to go in a home for old people or whatever." But it's very difficult to give an advice,
Of course.
because it's unless you're walked a mile in their shoes, you can't give advice. But what is important, what one advice is, that you also need time for yourself, even if it's just a couple hours a day, or if it's say, well, for 3 days I can do this, and someone else will take over for a while. That is, of course, an alternative to you. But 24/7, you have to be a saint in order to, not only a saint, but you have to have the stamina of an ox to go through with that.
Yeah, what I'm gathering from you, it's long term, when you have a diagnosis of, Parkinson's and dementia, are very, very interesting, because they can still function for so long, right? It's not like
Yes.
I have 6 months to live or anything like that.
Right.
But I mean, with Parkinson's, at least until it gets very advanced, the person's mind and cognition is still with it, and then
Sure.
eventually
Yeah.
they develop some dementia-related memory loss.
Yeah.
But what I'm gathering here is that long term, with an indefinite period of time, it isn't sustainable to be 24/7. And so, in the case of this particular person we were referring to, she has a sibling that comes and helps, but it's not someone who lives nearby. So it's maybe a bit of a hike. But I think in general, and when I say, by the way, advice, well, you're giving your point of view. So everybody's circumstances and experiences is different and their own. People can listen to what you're saying, you've done whatever worked for you, and try it on for themselves, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But I think that at one point or another, even myself with my sibling and my loved one, I know that we will need help. And that means having someone come in to do pretty much what you suggested and what you kind of were doing, which is kind of take shifts, and
Right.
I think the shifts is super important because it gives the caregiver a moment to reset. They have their own needs. I can tell you that with our loved one, either of us cannot be gone for too long because there's anxiety. And by too long, I mean sometimes even within a minute. So there's always someone with her, but we do try to come in and give my sister, who's the one that's doing the main caregiving, a break. She goes out and tries to do something social with a friend, with my husband, and I stay. But that doesn't mean that one person, not one of her loved ones, not being with her is gonna be ignored. Our loved one knows this person is not here with me. Why? Where are they? What are they doing? And I think that it's just the attachment of having them in their lives that even with my husband, where is he? How come he's not here? What is he doing? Is he okay? And this goes on multiple times.
Time.
So I think that's a good piece of advice to find ways to get help. Some people cannot manage looking after a loved one at home 24/7. That's why you have these facilities, like a home. That's not what we're doing, and I know that's not what this woman I was referring to is doing. But I do worry about burnout, and I mean burnout in a way that is not even mental anymore. I'm worried about the burnout that happens when it has reached your physical body, and
Yes.
now you're too sick to take care of your loved one, right? So it's like not helping each other. Anything else that you think can be helpful to our listeners? Anything that we haven't covered or that I should have asked you?
It is true, and as time goes on and the condition worsens, um, you do need help, and you have to reach out to get it, because otherwise there'll be two sick people, and that's not what the loved one would want. But they don't know. They can't rationalize
Right.
what a daughter or even a son at times goes through, to see the condition that a loved one or parent is in. And therefore, you have to be rational and say, okay, this is how far I can go. I need help. That's the most important thing to say, because otherwise, as I said, you have two sick people.
Monica, thank you for your insight and sharing a bit of your story with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was very interesting. Thank you.
You guys, I am signing off for now and wishing you a great week ahead. Thank you.